Yesterday, a federal high court sitting in Abuja did something that on the surface looks like good news for every obedient in this country. Justice Peter Lifu ordered INEC to deregister 5 political parties: the African Democratic Congress, Accord, Action Alliance, Action People's Party, and Zenith Labour Party. 5 parties wiped off the register just like that. And if you're an obedient, your first instinct might be to celebrate. ADC is gone. Atiku will not be on the ballot. That means their vote flows straight to NDC and Peter Obi. Less competition for Peter Obi in 2027. That is the surface understanding of this matter. That is what they want you to think. But stay with me, because when you actually sit down and trace who these parties belong to, who stand to lose the most from their disappearance, a completely different picture emerges. This isn't about sanitizing the political space or removing parties with no electoral value, like the court filing claims. This is a calculated surgical operation. 3 names connect every single party on that list: Alex Oti, Ademola Adeleke, and Atiku Abubakar. And at the center of it all sits one man with one goal: Bola Ahmed Tinubu total power consolidation ahead of 2027. Let us start with the official story because you need to understand it to see how cleverly it is being used. The case was filed by a group calling itself the National Forum of Former Legislators. In suit number FHC ABJ CS 2637-2026, the argument was simple on paper. Under section 225A of the Constitution, any party that fails to win at least 1 elective seat, federal, state, or local government, or fails to score 25% of a vote in a state during a presidential election, has no business remaining on INEC's register. Justice Lifu agreed, and under all 5 parties struck off, banned from even contesting the 2027 general election. That sounds neutral, right? Sounds like housekeeping. A court cleaning up Nigeria's notoriously overcrowded party system. That's exactly the genius of it. It's wrapped in legal language, so technical, so procedural, that anyone not paying close attention will shrug and move on. But here's the question nobody in the mainstream coverage is asking loudly enough. Out of dozens of small parties that technically qualify for the same treatment under that same constitutional provision, why these 5? Why now? And why just 2 hours before this judgment dropped had ADC unveiled Rotimi Amechi as Atiku Abubakar's running mate? Coincidence doesn't usually move that fast. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. If this ruling was really about cleaning up dead weight parties with no electoral relevance, there is a long list of small parties sitting right there, equally vulnerable, that nobody touched. The African Action Congress, led by Showore. The People Redemption Party, now being carried by Baba Ahmed, which has Donald Duke as its 2027 presidential candidate. The Boot Party, which has existed on paper for years without winning a single seat. None of them were on that list. And then there's a big one, the Allied People's Movement. The party Oyo State Governor Seyi Makinde recently adopted to launch his own presidential ambition after the PDP imploded into Wike versus anybody chaos. APM is by every measure the court case used against ADC and Accord just as irrelevant. No governorship, no national spread, nothing close to 25% of any state's presidential votes. If this exercise was genuinely about constitutional housekeeping, APM should have been first on the chopping block, not last of it. So why was Makinde spared? Very simple, because touching APM would have made the entire operation too obvious. Going after the sitting governor of Oyo State, a man who has positioned himself as a bridge builder rather than a direct Tinubu's antagonist, will have triggered exactly the kind of national outrage this whole scheme is designed to avoid. The people behind this ruling didn't pick 5 parties at random, they picked their targets carefully, leaving just enough untouched parties standing to maintain the illusion of a neutral blanket cleanup. That is not how a genuinely neutral process behaves. That is how a targeted operation protects its cover story. Now, let's go to the party most people glossed over in yesterday's headline, Zenith Labour Party. To understand why Zenith Labour Party made this list, you have to rewind to November 2024. The Labour Party at the national level was tearing itself apart, and in the middle of that chaos, Governor Alex Oti made a decision that reshaped Abia state politics. He quietly directed his loyalists to abandon the troubled Labour Party brand for the local government elections and run instead under a little-known platform, the Zenith Labour Party. The result was a clean sweep. Zenith Labour Party won 15 of Abia's 17 local government areas. Oti's people now control the grassroots machinery of an entire state under a party most Nigerians have never heard of before that election. Here's why that matters for 2027. Local government chairmen are not ceremonial figures in Nigerian politics. They are the engine room of any governorship campaign. They control world-level structures. They mobilize voters. They are the difference between a governor winning re-election comfortably and a governor getting ambushed at the polls. Oti, a Labour Party governor whose loyalists now run Abia councils as Zenith Labour Party officials, has built exactly the kind of grassroots fortress that wins or loses governorship election. Now strip Zenith Labour Party of its registration. It means stripping Governor Alex Oti of his loyalists at the grassroots. It means the 2027 general election in Abia State will be easily rigged against Governor Alex Oti. Recall that Governor Alex Oti has refused to defect to APC despite enormous pressure. This is one way to make him pay for that refusal. Chip away at his grassroots foundation quietly, through the court, instead of through the ballot box. Therefore, deregistering Zenith Labour Party is a subtle way of getting back at Governor Alex Oti and taking Abia State away from Labour Party and handing it over to APC. Now let us talk about Accord, because the timing here is almost too perfect to be accidental. When the PDP crisis reached its boiling point, Governor Ademola Adeleke, embattled, sidelined by the Wike faction, unable to get a fair stake within his own party, decamped to Accord and was unanimously confirmed as his 2026 governorship candidate. Osun election is scheduled for August 8, 2026. As I'm recording this video, that's roughly 2 months away. Osun State has never just been another state to Tinubu and the APC. It is a state they have fought tooth and nail to hold, going all the way to the highly contested 2018 and 2022 election that brought Adeleke into office. And the pressure hasn't gone. Also, local government have had over 130 billion naira in statutory federal allocation withheld since February 2025. Money meant for primary school teachers, nurses, and council workers. In a dispute the Adeleke camp call an illegal federal government squeeze. The APC insists it's just litigation delay. Whatever side of that argument you land on, one thing is undeniable. The state has been under sustained federal pressure for over a year. And now, with 2 months to go before voters decide whether Adeleke keeps his job, his party platform is suddenly ruled out of existence by a federal court. Think about what that means practically. A sitting governor, 2 months from your election, now has to scramble for legal remedies of an entirely new platform just to stay on the ballot, while his opponents campaign with a clean, settled legal status. You don't need a conspiracy theory to see how convenient that timing is for whoever wants us on back under APC full control. The deregistration didn't need to remove Adeleke directly from contention. It just needed to throw enough chaos and uncertainty into his candidacy 2 months before voting day to tilt the field. Now, let us get to the party everyone is actually talking about, ADC, the platform Atiku Abubakar adopted as his vehicle for a 2027 presidential run. We covered ADC troubles in our last video, but it's a layer to this specific ruling that deserves its own spotlight, because the motive here isn't just weakening the opposition brutally, it is personal, and it is strategic in a very specific way. Atiku and Bola Ahmed Tinubu share the same voting demography, older voters, particularly across the north. When you remove Atiku Abubakar from the ticket entirely, and where do you think a chunk of that elderly northern vote drifts? They won't go automatically to Peter Obi, a southern Igbo Christian candidate who skews northern and more urban in his support base. The calculation here is that those voters are more likely to default towards the familiar establishment figure left standing, which is Bola Ahmed Tinubu, than to gamble on Peter Obi. Remove Atiku Abubakar from the equation through the courts, rather than letting him slug it out at the ballot box, and you have potentially neutralized your most dangerous northern rival, while potentially positioning yourself to get his vote. If Atiku Abubakar fails to be on the ballot, considering the fact that he is not backing an Obi presidency, then that is an advantage to Bola Ahmed Tinubu, not to Peter Obi. This brings us to Peter Obi's reaction, and it is the most important part of this entire story. Within hours of the ruling, Obi spoke out, not cheering, not staying silent, but warning. He framed it as a direct threat to the credibility of Nigerian judiciary, arguing that the justice system perceived as bending to political pressure damages the entire country's standing. And he called on judges, senior lawyers, and legal professionals to rise and defend the rule of law before it's too late. Here is why his caution is the smartest read of this whole situation, not just opposition reflex. NDC-owned registration is already under direct legal assault. Multiple groups, the All Democratic Alliance, Umar Ado, the African Alliance Party, and a separate suit filed by Ahijo Kalahi seeking to strip INEC recognition of NDC entirely, are actively challenging the legitimacy of how NDC got registered in the first place. Under normal circumstances, those cases look like long-shot technical objection, the kind of thing that gets quietly dismissed. But normal circumstances just change. We now have fresh live proof that the Federal High Court is willing to deregister an established political party. If that machinery can be turned on ADC, Accord, and Zenith Labour Party this easily, there is no reason to assume it can be turned on NDC next. That is a trap. Obedience celebrating ADC downfall today are essentially cheering for the same legal weapon that could be pointed at their own party tomorrow. Peter Obi sees that. That is exactly why he's not celebrating. He's sounding the alarm bell. So you can see, this isn't really about cleaning up Nigerian political register. It's about quietly removing every meaningful obstacle standing between Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the second term, one court order at a time, while keeping just enough plausible deniability to call it housekeeping. Alex Oti loses his grassroots shield, Adeleke loses his ballot platform 2 months before voting, Atiku loses his vehicle entirely, and NDC gets a preview of exactly how it could be done to them next. Don't celebrate this ruling, watch it, because the next deregistration suit might already be sitting in a courtroom file somewhere in Abuja, just waiting for its moment.